Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who know who I am, my name is Sophia Bourgeois, and I work in the Advancement Department at the Burke Neurological Institute. I wanted to start this meeting by taking a moment to thank you all for being with us today. We understand that this is a really difficult time for everyone, and so we really appreciate that you've chosen to spend your afternoon with us today. In order to deliver the best webinar that we can, we have put together a couple guidelines just to get us through this. So the first one, in your Zoom window, you should see a button in the top right corner that says speaker view. Please click on that. This will keep the speaker in focus for the duration of the meeting and won't be distracting, having a lot of different bubbles popping up or anything like that. Your microphone and video have also been turned off. If you could just keep them this way for the duration of the webinar, this will keep from distracting other viewers or the speaker or anything like that. Closed captioning is also being provided during the webinar, and if you don't see it on your screen already, you can click on it in the bottom panel of your video screen. It should pop up and say closed captioning. Once you click on that, it'll give you the option to add it. Also, if you would like to increase the size of the text, there's next to the video icon in the bottom left of your Zoom window, there's an arrow. Click on that, and then it'll give you the option to click on accessibility. Once you click on that, there is a sliding scale, and you can choose or change the size of the text for you. And hopefully that'll be easier to read if it's too small for you. I will also be on call throughout the webinar today to answer any of the technical questions that you may have. Please email me if you need any clarification or any Zoom support at all. I'll be adding my email and cell phone number to the chat window so you have it for your reference. The webinar is also being recorded, so following the session, we'll be posting on our social media channels and website. Feel free to share with your family, friends, and colleagues too. I'll now introduce you to Christine Hughes, Burke Neurological Institute's Vice President of Institutional Advancement. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sophia. Our first speaker is Amy Bialek, and she will be talking to us about wellness. As I'm sure you all know, this is a very important topic, especially while we're all trying to maintain our optimal health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Amy is the Advanced Clinician Research Study Coordinator and Team Leader of Gait and Balance Program. Amy's career as a physical therapist has spanned over 2 decades. For the past 6 years, she has helped build cutting-edge clinical research programs at the Burke Neurological Institute. Her role as a clinician and research coordinator have allowed her to lead clinical trials which examine the use of different types of gait training, robotic devices with stroke, and spinal cord injury in both the acute and chronic stages of impairment. Amy earned her BA in Communication and Psychology from the University of Delaware in 1992. After a career in media, she decided her calling was to help people. Subsequently, she received a Master's of Science degree in physical therapy at New York Medical College in 1997. Amy began her career as a physical therapist at Sound Shore Medical Center in 1997, where she treated patients with neurologic, orthopedic, oncological, and cardiovascular impairments. She was an adjunct faculty member at New York Medical College for the doctorate PT program and has worked for the Visiting Nurses Service of Westchester. And Amy's vast experience in both short-term and long-term physical rehabilitation setting where she treats patients with various types of severities of impairments. She is now involved in developing more studies, including the Wellness Initiative at Burke Neurological Institute with Dr. Friel, to compassionately and scientifically advance treatment and help those with neurological impairments. Amy.
Christine. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to. All right, can you see it?
Perfect, Amy.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much for
Yeah,
the.
I'm just gonna turn off your video.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
thank you so much for the introduction, Christine. I'm going to be talking to everybody today about wellness. It is a key word today, especially. I'll be talking about wellness of the general population, but also that of the neurologically impaired population. I'll be showing studies and data about both, and we'll see where some of the gaps in the data are and how Burke Neurological Institute intends to fill that gap. So let's begin with what wellness is. So as you can see, wellness is composed of multiple dimensions. It can be intellectual, emotional, financial, spiritual, physical. All of these different dimensions are components, and each impacts the other, so we can see the overlap. If one component is missing, all of the other components are affected, which results in a decreased quality of life and a decrease in overall wellness. Well, how do we measure wellness? All of the studies that I'm going to tell you about and all of the information that I'm going to present have been measured by clinical trials. When we do a clinical trial, we collect two kinds of data. The first is objective data. So if I wanted to do a study about how heart rate and blood pressure are affected by exercise, I would develop a protocol. I would pick my measurements, my outcome measures, in this instance, blood pressure and heart rate. I would recruit enough participants to appropriately power the study so that the results are significant, and we would analyze that data. And the results could be validated because the data is objective. The other way that information is obtained, especially in measuring wellness, is by questionnaires, and that's subjective. So questionnaires as to how does this make you feel, or a pain scale from 0 to 10, tell me what your level of pain is. So these are not objective and can't be validated, but they're very, very important components of information that we get with wellness. So I'm going to be really focusing this talk on physical wellness because a lot of studies have been done in that domain. So let's begin with the Mayo Clinic. Per the Mayo Clinic, exercise helps us to control weight and manage all of these secondary possibilities of impairment, such as stroke, cancer, high blood pressure, diabetes, and subjectively has been shown to improve mood, anxiety, boost energy, and promote better sleep. It's also been studied extensively that physical activity can reduce these chronic diseases, lower healthcare costs, because if we stay physically active, we're hoping to stave off the diabetes and to reduce incidence of falls and lower blood pressure. And all of this can improve quality of life. The National Institute of Health has its own toolkit for improving physical health. They say to get active, maintain the body, find a healthy weight, mind the metabolism, eat a healthy diet, and build healthy habits. The Health and Human Services Department have come up with all of these benefits of physical activity. Again, proving already what's been shown, lowering the risk of type 2 diabetes, improving sleep, reducing depression, improving quality of life. The Department of Health and Human Services in 2008 came up with specific exercise guidelines to keep everybody physically active, understanding the importance of physical activity on overall wellness. In 2018, they improved through further studies and made different guidelines. So as you can see, what they're recommending is at least 2.5 to 5 hours a week of moderate aerobic activity, or half of that for vigorous aerobic activity, which includes running, walking, swimming. They want us to spend less time sitting and to strength train all major muscle groups at least twice a week. We can do that using body weight or weights from a gym. So that's great. Now we have the guidelines, the studies have been done, we know the benefits, so let's do it. It's not always that easy for every single population. So what if you have a disability? A disability is a physical or a mental condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. This can make it very difficult for somebody with a disability to access the type of exercise that they might need to keep well. There can be physical limitations in a disability, cognitive, behavioral, communication, and psychosocial limitations. This is a bigger deal than we think because many more people are affected by neurological impairments than most people know. Up to 1 billion people, nearly 1 in 6 of the world's population, suffer from a type of neurological disorder. So when I say neurological disorder, what do I mean? That could result from a diagnosis such as stroke, spinal cord injury, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury, Friedreich's ataxia, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, to name a few. So what happens if a person has a disability when it comes to physical wellness? Well, these people are at a very high risk for secondary impairments, such as bone loss because they're not able to bear weight the same way and have the same type of impact on their bones, bowel and bladder issues, pain, skin breakdown. That's what happened with Christopher Reeve. If you remember, he had a spinal cord injury. He had some skin breakdown that led to sepsis. Decreased muscle tone, metabolic changes, difficulty moving around in general, and obesity. And if you combine all of these secondary impairments with the lack of access to specialized equipment that many people in this population need to actually get the type of exercise required, and combine it with the lack of insurance coverage for these specialty services, and we get decreased wellness. So physical activity in adults with disabilities have been studied. And the results have been that those who remain physically active can see reduction in pain, improvement in cardiovascular and muscular fitness, improving brain health, physical function, and overall quality of life. Specifically, in Parkinson's disease, physical activity has been shown to improve walking, balance, and muscle strength. In multiple sclerosis, walking speed and endurance have been studied and shown to be improved. For people with spinal cord injury, improved walking function, wheelchair skills, muscular strength, and upper extremity function have been proven. And in stroke, we've seen increased walking velocity or endurance. So back to the Department of Health and Social Services, they didn't forget to study adults with chronic conditions or disabilities. These are the guidelines that they recommend. And if you look carefully, they're the same exact guidelines that are recommended for the general population. So they're saying who are able, people who are able, if you're able. Well, that's great, and those guidelines are wonderful, but what about the people who are not able to exercise because they either can't walk at all or they need to access specialized equipment in order to get that exercise? Well, the Surgeon General saw the same problem, and the Surgeon General said that only with accessible, comprehensive healthcare and wellness can people with disabilities really access the quality of life and wellness that they need. And that when it comes to access, many health and wellness programs are not addressing the needs for people with disabilities. They came up with 4 goals that are essentially saying that people with disabilities can certainly live long, productive, healthy lives, but that healthcare providers have to understand and tell people with disabilities where they can access that exercise and treat the whole person with a disability with dignity. And they want it accessible. The Surgeon General understands that access to healthcare has to be, that the proper healthcare has to be accessible to keep people well. So they and a few others also did a study and came up with all of these barriers to physical activity. So if somebody has a disability, why are they not able to get the exercise that they need? I'm not going to go over all of them, but a few are the lack of transportation or the high cost of transportation. For many people, they can get in the car and drive to the gym, but if somebody doesn't drive due to a disability or has a wheelchair, they might have trouble accessing transportation. Inability to pay for a fitness membership is not a small thing. Many people with disabilities have increased costs just because their healthcare costs are higher due to secondary impairments or needing home health aides. So the cost is a barrier. If somebody is able to get to a gym in a wheelchair, they had found that the front desk was too high for people who had wheelchairs, that there was not enough space in between the machines for wheelchair use, and that a lot of the equipment is not appropriate for people with certain physical disabilities. So there was a fear for these people that if they went to a typical gym that just had typical equipment and they had a problem, the trainers there are not specifically trained in neurological disorders to be able to help them, which causes a lot of anxiety. So that brings me to what we're doing now. So this is Dr. Friel on the left here, and you can see her. This is an exoskeleton over a treadmill. These are robotic legs that you see here, and this is a harness, and she is suspended by a body weight support. So somebody who can't use their legs at all can get into a device like this and be upright and exercise. This is a hand cycle. Dr. Friel again demonstrating how if one cannot use their legs at all, they can use a hand cycle to get exercise and for socialization. And this is an overground exoskeleton that I have used, and I can tell you that this is one of my participants from a study, and that smile is as real as can be. I have found that every single person who has been in this and gone from a wheelchair to standing upright, that smile is immediate. The immediate impact on quality of life is evident. Not to mention the cardiovascular system in an upright system, the bone being stressed in a healthy way, cardiopulmonary function, the skin integrity. So these have all been really positive things that we've seen just from getting people out of their wheelchair and upright. But it takes this kind of equipment many times in order for people with neurological disabilities to be able to be mobile. So now we know what's missing. We need data for this specific population. We need to know which equipment works, which exercises are best, specialized facilities that offer this type of equipment, and access to these facilities. So at Burke Neurological Institute, we are a research institute, and we're dedicated to finding cures for chronic neurological disabilities. We translate groundbreaking research into clinical treatments so people can see, talk, and walk again. We provide the science that hope demands. And in that effort, we are developing the Wellness Institute of Neurology at BNI, where we'd like to create rigorous research studies to provide the much needed data to this field of wellness in the neurological population. We want to study the most realistic and beneficial types and durations of exercise, the way it's done in the non-impaired population. We'd also like to provide a community for socialization for those who otherwise lack it. This would also give access to assistive exercise equipment that cannot be found elsewhere. And as our scientists are working very, very hard to find cures for the brain and the spinal cord, we'd like to keep people as well as they can be so that they qualify when those clinical trials arise. Really, this leads to immediate increase in quality of life when people are able to access the equipment that keeps them well and keeps them mobile. And the way that we're going to move forward is through clinical trials, which leads me to Dr. Friel's presentation.
Thank you, Amy. That was great. And just a reminder that after Dr. Friel's presentation, we're inviting everyone to go into your chat window and type questions, and you can type those at any time during either presentation. I'll be reading them to both the presenters after Dr. Friel speaks. So as you all know, our second speaker is Dr. Kathleen Friel, and she will be talking to us today about clinical trials. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we are hearing a lot about clinical trials in the news. Let's really try to understand why they are so important. Dr. Friel is the lab director of the Clinical Laboratory for Early Brain Injury Recovery at the Burke Neurological Institute. She's also the Associate Professor of Neuroscience at the Brain and Mind Research Institute at Weill Cornell Medicine. And she's the co-director of research, director of cerebral palsy research at Blythedale Children's Hospital. Dr. Friel has devoted her distinguished research career to understanding the neural substrates of motor and sensory deficits in stroke and cerebral palsy. She has a unique expertise in understanding the relationship between physiology, function, and health. Dr. Friel completed her Ph.D. in the laboratory of Dr. Randolph Nudo at the University of Kansas Medical Center, studying the importance of neurophysiology and neurophysiological underpinnings of sensory motor integration in a primate model of adult stroke. She completed her postdoctoral training with Dr. John Martin at Columbia University Medical Center, studying the anatomical, physiological, and motor behavioral consequences of developmental brain injury. As director of the Clinical Laboratory for Early Brain Injury Recovery at the Burke Neurological Institute and director of cerebral palsy research at Blythedale Children's Hospital, she uses non-invasive brain stimulation and magnetic resonance imaging to better understand the neurophysiological mechanisms by which sensory and motor deficits can be restored in children and adults with CP. She was awarded the R01 NIH research grant to study the effects of intensive hand therapy on sensory and motor function, as well as brain plasticity in children with cerebral palsy. She was awarded a second R01 to study sensory impairments in children with CP. Dr. Friel has recently completed an R03 NIH research grant to study the combined efforts of brain stimulation and robotic assisted upper limb training on motor recovery in adults with CP. Throughout her research career, she has obtained continuous NIH funding for her work. In 2010, she obtained an MS in biostatistics with specialization in patient-oriented research at Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health, giving her a strong expertise in study design, data analysis, and interpretation of findings. Kathleen.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Christine, Sophia, and Raj in the Institute for inviting Amy and I to talk to you during this unusual time in history. In normal years in May, many of us might be watching baseball games, either live or on television. So our world has changed, but hopefully, when it's safe, we can all enjoy sports again. So now I'm going to share my screen. And I'll turn off my video. So, reporting live from my park. So, what is a clinical trial? You've probably heard a lot about trials in the news. So, it's a study that involves humans. It's not an animal study, only humans. And participants are assigned to get some kind of intervention. And the study is designed to evaluate the effects of that intervention on the participants. And the effect is evaluated by a health-related outcome measure. So, some examples of trials. You heard Amy talk just now about the importance of exercise. So one trial might be to compare two types of exercise therapies and people with spinal cord injuries. In my lab, we do the studies in which we compare different types of hand training in children with cerebral palsy. And nowadays, you hear a lot of drug trials to compare the effects of two different drugs to treat COVID infection. So why are these trials important? Well, they provide an objective comparison of different therapies. they use standardized measures that are based on a strong scientific rationale, and they're not based on just anecdotal reports. Okay, one person improved when they did that at the start, but these are trials of many people with objective measures. And so using these measures to determine the effects of therapies. So when we design a clinical trial, the first step is to establish the methods. So you want to design a protocol, and you'll use the protocol for the entire trial. So you want to establish a really good protocol because you can't change it once you start. So you really want solid rationale of why you're doing this study a particular way, and decide which patients and how many to enroll. So most studies start off by a narrow focus to reduce the variability in outcomes. So one study might be for people who had a first-time stroke on the left side of the brain and a particular age range who do not have, say, heart disease. So they're very narrow at first. And when you implement a trial, you randomly assign people to treatment groups. So it can be a treatment and a control, or it can be two different treatment groups. And most good studies are what we call double blind. In this kind of study, the participants and the staff don't know which group each person is in, because there could be some bias if you believe that you're getting a particular therapy. And also, we don't look at the data, except the safety outcomes, until either the end of the study, or sometimes we'll do a midterm analysis halfway through the trial to see if we're on track. So we hear in the news a lot, okay, why is it going to take 18 months to get a vaccine for COVID? Why does this take so long? What are scientists doing all day? So even before you start, you, as I mentioned, need to establish a protocol based on really good science. You have to get funding for the study, which can often take a year or more from when you write the grant until you get the money. And you need ethical approval for everything that you do, which can also take a few months. And these are really important foundations. You can't skip any of these steps. And recruiting participants takes much time and effort. And as I mentioned, before and after the intervention, participants need to receive a battery of assessments. Data analysis and publication, as scientists know, can take many months. Yes, we generate a lot of data in every study, and it takes time to process. So the problem, though, is that if each of these steps is not done well, the trial is probably going to fail. So you won't get good results that will change the way that we treat patients. And even though this takes a long time, if you do a study that big, you've just wasted a lot of time and money. And reminder that NIH is funded by us, by our tax dollars. So, yeah, and if we waste time, like years, we could possibly be depriving people of effective therapies because we're delaying the approvals of therapies that could work. So there's challenges to good trials. So recruiting people that fit the trial is often challenging. And it's such a challenge, particularly when we present our results, like in the news or something, where people don't always understand how the findings apply to the world. So if a trial is done on a narrow focus of patients, as I mentioned before, people with first-time stroke and no other issues, these results might not generalize to people who have a lot of other health issues along with stroke. I'm sorry, this is. And many studies only include healthy controls. So a lot of the vaccine studies in the past have only enrolled controls. So then you don't know if those results apply to people with disabilities. Although there's new rules that NIH requires most studies to include people with disabilities. And it can be a challenge to interpret the data because there can be a lot of variability what we find. There's a principle of motor learning called the speed accuracy trade-off. So it means if you move more quickly, your accuracy tends to decrease. So imagine if you're tracing a curvy line on paper with a pen. The faster you move, the less accurate you'll probably be. And I believe this also applies to research and discovery. So we all have a great desire to help patients, but bad science doesn't help anyone. And if we run too fast when we're conducting a study, it could mean that we have to cut corners, which could reduce the accuracy of the study. And so we really need to take the appropriate time to plan, staff, run, and analyze the findings. As I mentioned before, yes, this takes time, but if we go too fast, we can lose accuracy. So now we're gonna do a seventh inning stretch. So what do you think? True or false? Clear trials usually help patients improve more than currently available therapies. So on your Zoom windows, there's apparently a reaction button. So if you think it's false, do nothing. If you think it's true, give us a thumbs up. So I'll give you a second to decide what you think. I'll take a look. Okay, this is false. So clinical trials do not necessarily help people improve more than currently available therapies. These are experimental therapies and they're not guaranteed. A study a couple years ago showed that only 14% of experimental drugs reach FDA approval. So that means 86% of drug trials fail. And it's worse from people with neurological impairments. So in a 20-year period, only 4% of stroke drugs reach the market. That means out of 430 drugs tested, 96% of them failed. So just because something is experimental, we might think, oh, it's cool, it's new, it's interesting, but there's not really good evidence that it works. In fact, if these stats hold true, there's actually a pretty good chance that it's gonna fail. So we need to be open to that. And so why did I fail? So the easiest is that the groups getting the therapy don't improve any more than the control group. There could be side effects that people just can't tolerate. And unfortunately, studies fail often because they can't recruit enough people to be in the studies. So what can we do to improve this? Well, as I mentioned, we really need to understand the biology of the disease and the mechanism of action of whatever thing that we're testing, and to spend a lot of time and money on recruitment. So Amy mentioned in her talk the importance of wellness. And this is something that we're all thinking about now, especially now that we're home, maybe not as active as we used to be. So I want to present a brief example of illness. So this person in her mid-30s, she was feeling a little bit older and looking for fitness options because, like with most people with cerebral palsy, her last therapy session was during school years and years before. So she decided to try taekwondo after she heard about another person with CP who benefited from doing martial arts. And she joined Harlem Taekwondo, and I realized the tenets of Taekwondo: modesty, perseverance, self-control, and utmost fear. So most kinds of physical therapy cost a lot, and they're only often covered by insurance for a brief times, like a month or two at best. And Taekwondo involves doing many of the same stretches and strengthening moves as PT, but it's fun, it's cool, it's social, and it's affordable. So 1 month of unlimited taekwondo classes costs about the same as one session of physical therapy. And there was success in this one case. So after 8 years of training, she became one of the few people with CP to earn a black belt in taekwondo. But it wasn't only after 8 years. Even in the first few months, she noticed improvements in flexibility, strength, balance, which improved again over the years of training. And so surprised, this person probably guessed his name. So this is my teacher, Master Fowl, on the day of my final test last year. And this is the black belt crew out Taekwondo. And they're just amazing people. So does this mean that Taekwondo is beneficial for people with cerebral palsy? Well, not yet. So this was only one person enrolled, and we didn't do any outcome measures because, to be honest, I didn't know if I would stick with it all those years. So we need to do better. So how would you design a trial for people with CV to test the effects of taekwondo? So you choose participants with particular inclusion criteria. So maybe you might say adults who belong in a certain age group with no other major health issues. And you design a detailed protocol and not stray from it. The study should be blinded, as I said, if you can. So imagine if you were to compare your taekwondo versus yoga, for example, you would know which group you're in, obviously. So one of the options would be to study two groups of taekwondo training who get different frequency training or different exercises within the sessions. And use robust measures that are taken by somebody who's blinded and trained. So looking at balance, walking, speed, cardiovascular health, muscle strength, bone health, and quality of life. You want to enroll a lot more than just one person. You want probably 10 or more per group. And you want to carefully track safety and pain and monitor training to ensure that as the training goes on, that you don't drift from the protocol. And we often utilize outcome measures in collaboration with a biostatistician who can really use the most appropriate statistics. And even during the analysis, keep everyone blinded. So instead of saying which group is which, just say group A and group B. And then only at the end, unblind results. And also interpret this results responsibly. So this study would have been done in adults with cerebral palsy. So the conclusions probably don't apply to your kids or to people with stroke. But if we find that taekwondo is effective at improving function in people with CV, it would serve as a good rationale for doing a similar study in other groups. In conclusion, I love the tenets of taekwondo, and I think that they apply to science as well. So modesty is important. So we strive to do the best science, and we need to be open to have all of our great ideas torn apart. Perseverance. So take time to do the very best science. Probably it will take longer than you want, but doing it right will yield the best discoveries. Self-control. So don't overinterpret your data. If you find interesting results, don't say, oh, this is going to help everyone. Don't really look at the data and download. So we're all in this together. Scientists, patients, families, and community members. And even though we're physically apart right now, I find it so cool to see all of your names and faces on the screen. And it reminds me that even when we're apart, we're still together. So thank you very much. And I will be happy to answer any questions you guys have. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh,
Kathleen. Can you
yeah,
unshare your screen?
yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So just again, thank you, Kathleen. That was wonderful. And Amy. And now we have this great opportunity for everybody who is on the webinar to ask Amy and Kathleen any questions. And in this day and age, I would imagine you have quite a bit. And actually, the first question came to me via text. So basically, the question is, during the pandemic, and obviously with this particular population, the neurologically impaired population, not having access to the places like Burke Neurological Institute, or having access to gyms or Taekwondo, there's a real concern by a lot of the participants today. What do you think those folks are doing? What are we doing to help? What are you doing during this time to help those patients? I can only imagine this is not only trying for us, but especially trying for them as well. So if Kathleen or Amy or both would like to give us some insight into that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think right now what we're doing is keeping in touch with everybody that we would normally be treating. I've offered some kind of Zoom treatment, telehealth, keeping in touch. Right now it's keeping everybody healthy until we can get them back on their feet.
Yeah, and I've seen both for school, usual gyms and some specialty gyms that they offer Zoom exercises for people with different kinds of abilities. So that also helps.
We do have some links that we can probably share and get back to people about things that are being done right now virtually. So, we can put together a page of that, exercises, meditations, things from wheelchairs that can be done. I can't hear you, Christine.
Sorry. And this may be a good time if Sophia can just put on the links to the resource pages on the BNI website. So we do have wellness links, and a lot of it's geared towards people who are experiencing big challenges right now. So
No problem.
Thank you, Sophia. So we're going to move on with the questions. Thank you, Ilhan. There's a question as to whether or not the slides will be available after this webinar. And just so you know, the webinar is being recorded and you will have access to the link. So no worries, if you tuned in late, you won't be missing anything. And here's another question. Can Kathleen or Amy comment on the difficulty of designing a clinical trial in terms of individual people needing individual training? For instance, even in Taekwondo, people will progress differently or need to work on different skills. So everyone might not be able to stick to the same protocol.
Yeah, I think we can both comment a little bit about that.
Yeah.
When we design a protocol, we design that in mind. So it depends if we're looking at somebody who has, let's say, a spinal cord injury versus who has a stroke, and we know what type of impairments we might be accepting for each study. For the wellness initiative, we're really looking to keep that criteria as wide as possible so that we can accept everybody that we possibly can. So it really depends. Everybody individually is different, but the things that we would measure would be outcome measures that each person who participates would be able to achieve.
Yeah. And why I keep disappearing. In the research that we do and my taekwondo training, so for example, we might say the kids will work on grasping movements for this amount of time. But then for each child, we'll have easier or more challenging activities based on their own ability. And as they improve, we can make the tasks more challenging. likewise, in taekwondo, yeah, I'm the only one with a disability at that school, so I'm not the best student. But so say if we're doing 10 minutes of kicking, everyone else's kicks are higher than mine. But that's okay. I do my low kicks and I do the best I can. And to have that openness so you're all working on the same movements, but you have the freedom to do the best you can, even if it's not as good as someone else, is really valuable.
Thank you both. Next question. This is a good question. Is there a specific target group that you are considering to start with for your wellness trials?
You know, we've discussed that we'd like to keep the inclusion criteria so the people that are able to participate as wide as possible. Many studies have very narrow criteria where they might want to participate, but very few people qualify for the trial. We want the opposite in this case. So rather than looking at one particular target group, we would more be looking at a larger group of impairments. So maybe we're doing a study saying, you know, do people do better with this type of equipment versus that type of equipment? Or we can do a study and look at how people are responding to that study based on their diagnosis, but it would be more impairment based so that anybody who has difficulty doing A, B, or C could qualify and those results would be valuable.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I agree that you want to enroll a variety of people. Yeah, to see which approaches work best for which people.
Maybe I can, this is Raj, maybe I can just add one thought. And I think it's an excellent question, and Amy and Kathleen have outlined a couple of different strategies. Another strategy is to standardize the training and standardize the outcomes for patients that have different capacities, and then define who does well and who does poorly, and then go back and identify which groups are doing well in that particular intervention, and then go back to those people who didn't benefit. I think the problem that they highlight is that if you continually individualize interventions, you never get to statistically valid population measurements of what works and what doesn't work. And if you don't get things that are valid, then there's no way to essentially extend the results globally, nationally, internationally. So I think the idea is to try to move away from the individualized therapy and standardize and go backwards and use data analytics to tell you almost precision medicine to identify groups who benefit most from those standard interventions.
Exactly. Thanks, Josh.
Okay, so another question I received via email. Can you give us an understanding of this initiative and how many people ultimately it can help? So I think what the participant is asking for is just to understand maybe a little bit about neurological impairments and what does that number look like, you know, maybe in the US, in our area. Maybe we can give some context.
Of how many? I'm sorry. We're looking to see how many participants we would have.
Well, I think what the participant would like to know is basically, you know, so obviously we know we have a lot of neurological conditions that the Institute researches, but I guess as far as the wellness, they're curious to know, you know, what does that population look like? You know, what's the impact of a wellness initiative?
I think we're generally looking for anybody that has any kind of a neurological impairment that impacts their wellness. We haven't outlined first studies yet. We haven't really, but what we've discussed this greatly, and we want to have the biggest impact we can on the biggest number of people that we can. So again, we're not targeting a specific population right now. We would rather say, hey, if anyone's having difficulty with this, we're studying if we try this, we're looking at best responses. So there are plenty of people in the area. Stroke is a very, very, very big population right now. Spinal cord less so, but still big. So we have a lot of people in the area that could benefit. And we're hoping that this can be something that, if it's a successful model, can be rolled out so it's accessible elsewhere.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, I think it's, since there's so little known about how different people with different impairments respond, we really need to enroll a large number of people with a variety of impairments. Kind of Raj highlighted that then we can identify, well, which therapies work best for which kinds of patients. And then from there, we can start focusing on optimizing a particular therapy for each particular cluster of patients that we discover by doing strong data analysis and having large amounts of data.
Yeah. So maybe I can add again. Just I think for people to just think about how many lifetimes, equinoxes, and New York sports clubs there are around the country. None of those facilities are able to accommodate the needs of people who are disabled. And yet people who are disabled have the same requirements for being able to stay fit and maintain their function as anyone who is able. So the numbers of people who are potentially affected by a wellness program that starts to build in an understanding of what equipment is safe, how should we use it, how will it benefit people, it's millions, hundreds of millions.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's an incredibly important goal, and because only a limited number of people can participate in trials, I think, as Amy said, this is something that could be expanded to many more people than who could participate in trials.
For sure.
Thank you. We have another question. Can physical therapy help in clinical trials as a mode of treatment to improve wellness in a person? How do you measure or standardize data with physical therapy?
Yeah, I think we're talking less about physical therapy in particular. I think we're talking, as Raj said, about a population of people who are underserved at the moment, that we understand the exercise guidelines required, but they're unable to attain those guidelines because they're physically unable to use typical gym equipment or to take a walk around their block or ride a bike. So I'm going to say it's less about a specific physical therapy protocol and more about using accessible equipment and studying that equipment with different protocols to see how it benefits people, how much they need, what's better. The only way we'll know is when we do these studies.
I can add for the issue of measuring, there are standardized tests that we use to measure how someone's balance or other gait speed. And another goal that we have is to develop technologies that can help us measure those things more accurately and easily using objective measures, using say Fitbits or other robotic devices to really get a good quantitative understanding of what these therapies are doing to patients.
There are gold standard outcome measures. We have walk tests, like Kathleen said, we have balance tests. Those are things that are done in physical therapy all the time, and they are gold standards, and they're accepted in the best studies. So we would still use those techniques and those measures, but we would just use different approaches for people who couldn't walk without devices.
And we have time, hopefully, for just one last question. And thank you both so much. Have you considered using any wearable devices like Fitbit? And I think Dr. Friel just mentioned that, to monitor the activity, duration, and intensity changes when participating in a fitness program.
Yes, that's part of our plan, is to be able to accurately measure people's function. One of the issues about Fitbits is that they don't work for every kind of person with a disorder. So if a person uses a wheelchair to move, Fitbit isn't gonna measure their arm effort. So that they can work for a lot of people. And I think we still need to develop new technologies to measure exertion and activity that people who currently have no easy measures.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Amy.
No, agreed. Anything we can use to standardize or to measure, we certainly are looking to do. But each study, like Kathleen said, would have to depend upon what we're looking to measure. But absolutely, anything we can standardize, we would like to standardize.
And I know we spent a lot of time sort of referring to a physical impairment, basically a motor impairment, the ability to move. And I think there's a lot of interest in other impairments, potentially cognitive. Do you see the future of the wellness initiative also addressing that impairment as well?
Yeah, I think the first initiative that we're talking about is a motor, a more physical type of initiative, but I think we envision this looking at nutrition, looking at cognition, looking at vision, really expanding it to every aspect of wellness.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much to wellness and so many ways that hopefully we can improve those domains, but also doing it with the best practices, best measures, and really trying to use things that other people haven't used before that can move us beyond what is currently known about these other domains.
Well, I'd like to thank both of you very much for your time today. We at the Burke Neurological Institute would like to thank everyone who participated today for their time and participation. We will email the recorded webinar and the wellness trial resource page links to our website to all registered participants. Please share them with anyone who may need them, and follow the BNI social media and weekly communications for more updates and webinars. Lastly, we'll be sending out a webinar survey, so please give us your feedback so you can help us help you. Have a good week and stay well, stay safe, and stay informed. Thank you both.
Thank you, everyone.